Retirement is basically a video game, and nobody told you which difficulty setting you accidentally selected 20 years ago. Some of you are playing on easy mode, infinite money glitch, basically. You retired and your bank account said, haha, cute, keep spending. Some of you are on normal mode, you've got enough health potions, you're managing your resources fine, you're not losing any sleep over it, and some of you, bless your heart, are on nightmare difficulty with no save points. One health bar, and Medicare Part B is the final boss standing between you and your own paycheck. Today we're ranking the 3 financial classes of retirement in 2026. The rich, the comfortable, and the please I am begging, do not let anything else break tier. And here's the twist that's going to annoy some of you. Your difficulty setting was not decided by your salary. It was decided by a bunch of boring little choices you made in your 20s and 30s that felt completely irrelevant at the time. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to know exactly which difficulty you're currently on, and more importantly, how to patch your save file before the game actually ends. Quick disclaimer before we dive in, because I know somebody's going to say it in the comments anyway. This isn't financial advice. It's a framework for thinking about where you stand and where you're headed. So talk to an actual advisor about your specific numbers, okay? Boring part's over. Let's go. Let's start at the bottom of the leaderboard, because honestly, that's where the drama lives. Meet Frank. Frank is 68. Frank fixed cars for 4 decades. Frank is, by every measure, a good dude. Showed up on time, never called in sick, never once complained about a Monday in his entire life. And Frank never really saved money, not because he's irresponsible, but because life kept sending him surprise invoices disguised as emergencies. A new roof, a dead transmission, a kid's wedding, a different kid's very confusing legal situation that we genuinely do not need to get into today. You know a Frank. Some of you are currently, secretly, quietly a Frank. No judgment here. Take a breath. Keep watching, because this gets better. So here's Frank's actual retirement in numbers. And buckle up, because it's rough out there. Frank lives almost entirely off Social Security. The average retired worker's check this year sits around $2,200 a month. Do the math, and that's roughly $26,000 a year, give or take, depending on which survey you trust. Sounds like a real number until Medicare Part B reaches into that check like a raccoon into a trash can and takes its cut before Frank even sees a dime of it. Then rent or property taxes take their bite, then groceries, which somehow cost $80 now for what used to be a $20 bag of stuff a Frank can't even remember buying in the first place. By the time Frank pays for housing, food, and the pills keeping him upright, there is officially nothing left. Zero. The fun money line item is a myth, a legend, basically a cryptid at this point. A big night out for Frank is when the pharmacy happens to be in a different zip code, and he treats the drive over there like a genuine road trip, radio on, windows down, living his best life on a budget of absolutely nothing. And here's the stat that should stop you cold. Nearly half of Americans who haven't retired yet already admit they don't expect to be financially ready when the time actually comes. Half the country. That's not some rare, unlucky glitch in the system. That's basically the default setting the whole game shipped with, right out of the box. No patch notes included. And look, I need you to actually hear this next part because it matters. Frank didn't fail some test. Wages stopped keeping up with prices decades ago. Pensions basically went extinct like the flip phone and the CD player. The entire retirement system quietly got handed off from companies to regular people, and absolutely nobody included an instruction manual with it. So if you see yourself in Frank right now, hear me clearly. This is not a you did this to yourself video. This is half the country on this exact difficulty setting, and most of them work just as hard as everybody sitting above them. The actual mistake isn't being where Frank is today. The mistake is staying there once you've still got time to build a second engine. And that part, that specific part, is fully in your hands. We're getting to exactly how in just a minute, so don't go anywhere. Now, let's bump up to normal difficulty, the comfortable retiree, because honestly, this tier deserves way more hype than it usually gets. Meet Diane. Diane taught 4th grade for 30 years, retired 18 months ago, and Diane is thriving in a way that should genuinely be studied by scientists. Paid off house. Modest retirement account. She actually contributed to the entire time. Every single paycheck. A small pension from the school district that shows up like clockwork. Diane does water aerobics on Tuesdays with the girls. Diane has a trip to Portugal booked for the fall. Diane bought an e-bike she will ride exactly 3 times this year, and somehow, genuinely, that's still a win. Here's what's actually funding Diane's good life behind the scenes. Comfortable retirees in 2026 are generally bringing in somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 a year as a household. Call it $5,000 to $8,000 a month coming in the door. On the net worth side, a lot of advisors put the comfortable range somewhere around $750,000 up to $1.5 million. And here's the kicker nobody mentions enough. A big chunk of that, Sometimes a third to half of the entire number is just the house. Not a genius stock pick, not some secret trading strategy. The house. That paid-off roof over her head isn't just where she sleeps at night. It's basically a financial force field quietly deflecting disaster year after year. The real engine, though, the actual secret sauce behind this whole tier, is this. Comfortable retirees almost always have income coming from somewhere besides Social Security. A pension, an annuity, a portfolio big enough to actually throw off real spendable cash every single year without draining itself down to nothing. Think of it as unlocking a second character in your party instead of trying to solo the entire dungeon with one guy and a rusty shield. But here's where people get blindsided even in the comfortable lane, and it's the boss fight nobody prepares for in advance. Healthcare. Even with Medicare technically doing its job, a typical couple retiring today can expect to spend a genuinely terrifying amount on medical costs over the rest of their combined life. Premiums, dental, hearing aids that cost more than a used car. And the big scary one that catches everybody off guard, long-term care, which Medicare mostly just shrugs at and politely declines to cover. Comfortable retirees aren't comfortable because they somehow dodged that bill entirely. They're comfortable because they planned for it years ahead of time instead of getting sucker punched by it at 78 years old with no warning. Let's put real numbers on Diane's actual life so this isn't abstract. Say she and her husband both collect close to average Social Security. That's roughly $48,000 to $50,000 combined every year. Add a portfolio somewhere around $600,000 to $750,000, responsibly kicking off another $25,000 to $30,000 a year on top of that. Stack it all up, and you're sitting comfortably right in that $75,000 to $85,000 zone as a household. That's not yacht money, let's be honest, but that is absolutely, we're going to Portugal. And we are not obsessively checking the exchange rate on our phones at dinner money. Here's the quiet little secret of this entire tier that nobody says out loud enough. You do not need to be rich to feel rich in retirement. You just need your dependable income to comfortably clear your actual lifestyle, healthcare fully included, with a little cushion left over for the e-bike and the water aerobics class. It's not about the size of the pile you've accumulated. It's about the gap between what's coming in and what's actually going out the door. Close that gap and congratulations, you basically bought yourself peace of mind at a serious discount. Now, let's go to the top of the leaderboard, the rich retiree. God mode, unlimited lives, every cheat code fully activated and typed in correctly on the first try. Meet Renee. Renee retired at 61 with about $3 million spread across her retirement account, a brokerage account, and a couple of rental properties she genuinely barely thinks about anymore. Renee's portfolio alone throws off well over $100,000 a year, all by itself, and that's before Social Security even shows up to the party like an uninvited but extremely welcome guest who brought good wine. Picture a couple sitting in Renee's exact position. A $2 million portfolio alone can responsibly generate somewhere around $80,000 a year using standard withdrawal guidelines. Stack their Social Security checks right on top of that, and you're looking at $150,000 plus in household income without either one of them ever having to touch a job application again for the rest of their lives. Renee's biggest financial stress right now, and I mean her actual biggest stress, is genuinely deciding which grandkids' college fund gets the bonus contribution this year. That's the whole crisis. That's the entire drama in her life right now. The magic number everybody obsesses over online, the one people think they absolutely need to retire comfortably, sits around $1.46 million according to a recent nationwide survey. And that number keeps climbing every single year like it's got somewhere important to be. The Renees of the world blew past that number a long time ago and just kept climbing anyway, mostly out of pure habit at this point rather than necessity. But here's the actual difference between her and everybody else, and it's not the number on the account statement, it's the behavior underneath it. 3 specific things. First, they spend from a place of total security instead of caution. The comfortable retiree budgets carefully because they have to, every single month, no exceptions. The rich retiree budgets carefully because the habit simply never turned off, even though technically nothing is forcing them to anymore. A lot of them actually underspend what they could easily afford, purely out of decades of muscle memory they can't shake. Second, market crashes genuinely don't spare this group, but they also don't sink them, and there's a boring mechanical reason why that has nothing to do with luck. Rich retirees usually keep a fat cash and bond cushion sitting off to the side, often a couple years' worth of living expenses parked in safe, boring, unglamorous assets. So when the market throws one of its dramatic little tantrums, and it always eventually does, they never have to sell anything at the bottom just to keep the lights on and groceries in the fridge. Third, their entire brain shifts from accumulating to directing. Once the income floor feels genuinely bulletproof, the question stops being, do I have enough? And becomes, where does this go now? Taxes become the new obsession. Roth conversions during low-income years, smart withdrawal ordering across different account types. Legacy planning becomes the obsession too. What goes to the kids, what goes to charity, and how to hand it all off without the tax man taking the biggest possible slice of the pie on the way out. Rich retirees are not smarter than everybody else watching this video right now. They just leveled up into a completely different category of problem to solve, and that's an important distinction to hold on to. Okay? So how do you actually climb a tier? For real, starting today. Let's get tactical, no fluff, no filler. These 4 moves aren't complicated, they aren't secret, and none of them require a finance degree. That's actually the annoying part. There's no hidden trick here, just 4 boring habits repeated for a couple decades straight. Move number 1, build a second income stream, full stop, no exceptions allowed. The single biggest factor separating the back of the pack from the middle of it is having money show up from somewhere besides Social Security alone. Employer match on your retirement account? That's free upgrade points just sitting there on the table. Go grab every single one of them immediately. No pension available to you? Fine. Your own portfolio has to become your pension instead. So build it on purpose instead of by accident over the years. Some people eventually convert part of it into an annuity just to create a paycheck that shows up like clockwork, no matter what the market happens to be doing that particular month. The rule is simple, and it never changes, never fly on a single engine. Move number 2, kill the mortgage before you retire if there is any possible way on earth to do it. This one single item separates comfortable retirees from struggling ones more than almost anything else on this entire list. A paid-off house in a reasonable cost of living area saves you an absolutely obscene amount of money over 30 straight years compared to renting or carrying a payment deep into your 70s. Walking into retirement with zero housing debt hanging over your head is like starting the video game with your inventory already stocked with the good gear instead of a wooden sword and a hopeful prayer. Move number 3, defend yourself against lifestyle creep because it is sneaky, it is patient, and it will absolutely get you if you're not paying attention. Every single time you get a raise at work, your spending quietly wants to grow right along with it, almost automatically. This is the silent little gremlin that drags plenty of high earners down into the struggling tier later in life, despite making great money for decades. The move is to bank the raise instead of upgrading the lifestyle every single time it happens. Future you, the one actually trying to enjoy retirement someday, is begging present you to knock it off right now. Move number 4, and this one's completely free, doesn't cost a dime. Don't panic, and whatever you do, don't bail. The people who end up at the top of the leaderboard stayed invested through every scary headline, every market meltdown, every single the sky is falling news cycle that came along. The people who pulled everything out at the bottom and hid it under a mattress missed the recovery every single time like absolute clockwork without fail. Discipline beats brilliance in this particular game basically every single time it's put to the test. And look, I get it. Staying invested during a scary headline feels like standing perfectly still while someone yells that the building is on fire. Every fiber of your being wants to do something, anything, immediately, but the people who won this game long-term were often the ones doing the least dramatic thing possible in the moment, which is nothing. They just kept contributing on autopilot, kept the plan running quietly in the background, and let boring compounding do the heavy lifting while everyone else was refreshing their portfolio app every 11 minutes, having a small breakdown at the kitchen table. Let's talk about one more character real quick, because I think this one hits close to home for a lot of you. Meet Gary. Gary made great money. Gary was a regional sales manager, 6 figures for most of his career, company car, corner office, the whole deal. Gary should have ended up somewhere between Diane and Renee easily, no question. Instead, Gary's somewhere back with Frank. And the reason isn't bad luck. The reason is Gary financed a boat he uses twice a summer, upgraded his house twice chasing a bigger kitchen he didn't need, and treated every single raise like it was permission to spend more instead of a chance to quietly get ahead. Gary is proof that income was never the deciding factor here. Gary is proof that the leaderboard doesn't care what you used to make. It only cares what you actually kept. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I make good money, I should be fine, I want you to sit with Gary's story for a second, because good income with no savings discipline just means you get to be broke with a nicer car in the parking lot. That's it. That's the whole upgrade you get. Now here's the myth we need to absolutely torch before you click away from this video. Everybody assumes these 3 tiers get decided by how much money you made over your career. Big salary, top tier automatically, small salary, bottom tier automatically. This feels logical on the surface, right? It's wrong. It is spectacularly, almost comically wrong, and the data backs that up over and over again. Your retirement tier gets decided overwhelmingly by your savings rate and your fixed costs, not by the number on your old paycheck. It's the gap between what you earned and what you actually kept, quietly compounding for 30 or 40 years while you weren't even paying attention to it happening. Somebody who saved 15% of a modest salary for 3 decades and walked into retirement completely mortgage-free will absolutely demolish somebody who earned triple that income, saved almost nothing, and still owes payments on 2 cars and a lake house nobody in the family actually visits anymore. Think of it less like your bank balance on the day you finally walk out of your job for the last time, and more like experience, points you've been quietly farming for decades without ever realizing the game was tracking them the whole time in the background. You don't get bumped up a tier because you showed up with a fat wallet on retirement day itself. You get bumped up because of 1,000 tiny, boring, forgettable decisions you made years earlier that you honestly don't even remember making anymore. Which is fantastic news, genuinely, because it means almost all of this is still in your control right now, today, regardless of your age. You can't always control your salary. That part's often out of your hands. But you can absolutely control your savings rate, your debt load, and whether you let lifestyle creep quietly eat your future for lunch without you noticing. Those are the actual levers that decide your tier, not the number that used to show up on your paycheck. Let's do a quick speed run of everything before you go, because repetition is how this stuff actually sticks. Frank is stuck relying on one income source and a house payment that never let up. Diane built a second stream of income and paid off her house years before she needed to. Renee did both of those things decades ago and then just never stopped. Same 3 moves, 3 completely different outcomes. And the only real variable was time plus discipline, not luck and not salary. So here's what I want you to do before you click away from this video. Drop a comment down below and tell me honestly, which difficulty setting are you currently playing on, and which one are you actually trying to unlock next? Are you Frank right now, hoping to become Diane? Are you Diane wondering if Renee's life is even realistic for you? I read every single one of these comments, and I promise you, your situation is way more common than you currently think it is, and somebody else scrolling through the comments needs to hear that they're not the only one behind where they thought they'd be by now. I hope this made your own retirement picture a little bit clearer today. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you in the next one. Save like your future self is watching, because on this 30-year run, they absolutely are.